Hello, Mr. Stewart. Thank you for agreeing to give us the interview in the end of your mandate here in Romania. First of all, I would like to know how was Romania in 1999 when you came in here?
Actually, I came in June 1st, 2000.
2000.
Right.
How was Romania and how is Romania now?
It's like night and day. I mean, when I first came here, I was looking around. I saw all these carrozzas on the highway. I'm thinking, like, where are the cars? Now, all joking aside, Romania's made tremendous strides. I mean, if you look out our window right now, you see buildings all around us. I remember in 2001, 2002, a little bit later, little red light at this corner. These were all fields. I used to have to wait for the farmer to cross the milk cows in the morning on the way to work. And things have changed so much, and many things for the better. So Romania has turned into a really well on its way to a real modern economy.
How would you describe the experience in the Raiffeisen Bank Romania? 20 years. It's a
challenging at first, clearly because I was part of just one branch. Raiffeisen here in 2000 when I arrived was just one branch, and I was thinking that, my gosh, I must have made a mistake taking a job with a bank that has one branch and a total balance sheet of $69 million. And right after that, our major shareholder in Vienna, Raiffeisen International, was looking to expand their presence in Romania because they saw the opportunities for Romania. And I was put as the project manager on the acquisition of a bank. We were looking at two. We wound up on one. We wound up buying Banca Agricola from the state of Romania, and
with a lot of problems.
Yes, but with problems. I like to build things, and Steve Groningen, our president, joined right after we bought the bank, and we both had a great time building that bank. We had a great team of people. I mean, that's what made it easy. It was challenging at first because it was a dead bank. It had only, I think, a loan portfolio of only 20 million euros at the time of loans. And the question is how do we quickly restart the bank so it becomes profitable? And I remember friends and colleagues on the market at the time, they were putting their arms around me and said, "Jim, you're going to die with that bank. Good luck." And after about 2 years, they weren't laughing anymore. And we have become respected, and we continue to be a respected bank in Romania. And I'm very proud to be part of the Raiffeisen team here.
You worked before Romania, you worked in Bulgaria.
Bulgaria for 2 years.
The key moment when the transition to the socialist period to the economist, capitalist economy.
Right.
How was the experience there?
That was like the Wild West at the time. Bulgaria was just coming out of a currency crisis, late 96, I think it was the beginning of 97. They instituted the currency board in 1997, which stabilized the economy to a very large extent. I arrived in May of 98, and there it was, my children couldn't believe they were there, my wife couldn't believe we were there. It was hard to get food. Everybody used to drive to Greece on Friday so they could get food because a lot of the stores didn't have any at the time. Now Bulgaria is, just like Romania, is well on its way to a transition. I worked at the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank there on reserve and debt management. Once again, I always seemed to be lucky to work with good people. And at the time, the people in the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank were so eager to learn. They had just come out of communism, and they were looking to really expand their knowledge base, and they were looking at me to teach them to a very large extent. And we had a great team there too at the National Bank and the Ministry of Finance, and we were able to accomplish a lot. We got a domestic debt market going. We helped them restructure their external debt, and have a lot of good friends still in Bulgaria. The person I worked for directly was Plamen Orosharsky, who later became the Minister of Finance, and after that became the Prime Minister. And then I also worked with the head of the currency board, Martin Zaimov.
Yes.
And he managed the National Bank managed that part of the National Bank through a very difficult time with the currency board. And Now he's in private business, but we all still remain friends, and we keep in contact with one another.
But what was Romania compared with Bulgaria at that time?
It's a different culture. I mean, first of all, it's a different culture, as I said. Bulgaria, obviously Slavic. Romanian is much more Southern Italian. It's what I learned in Bulgaria. Bulgarians are very much yes or no, black and white, and the Romanians here are sort of gray in between. And one thing that I was taught early on in Romania was in Romania everything is possible.
Yes.
And I came to believe that that's quite true. That people used to look at me, and when I would ask them a question, they would look at me, you could see in their mind, why is Jim asking me this question? And what's in it for him? And so therefore it was a new experience coming from, like I said, a very Slavic background to a much more Italian culture, or Latin culture.
Yes.
But it's still a lot of fun. I mean, the people here are great. Countryside's beautiful. Romania is a sleeping giant. It really is. It's a great country.
How do you see the future of the banking system in Romania after this period?
Yeah, the better question probably is how do we see the banking system globally? But I'm sure you'll get to that question later.
Of course.
In Romania, I mean, still, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have about 34 odd banks right now in one form or another. A country this size, do we really need that many? I think that if you're really outside the top 7 maybe, that probably you're not going to have enough market share to really make yourself a real profitable bank here. I see the continued consolidation in the banking market here. I see that with the push towards digital banking, I see the transformation quite rapidly from a branch system to more digital touch points. We're moving towards cashless branches. Everything's going to be electronic. So just like Romania, when I first arrived here, the landlines were terrible and the mobile phone system was okay. Now, I mean, Romania just jumped right over. There are no landlines anymore. I think Romania has probably a lot better cell coverage and cell phone reception than we do in the States. So Romania really, and I think Romania will probably do that in the banking system also.
What are your expectations from the Bosnia-Herzegovina when you will go after Romania?
Good question. Not really sure. I mean, this came about quite unexpectedly. It was last week only that I got a call from head office that asked me if I'd be interested in going as the interim president for Raiffeisen Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I said, talk with my wife. She said, go ahead, how long is it going to be for? I said 3, maybe 4 months. She said, okay, give it a try. She'll be back home because we're renovating our house, so we'll keep her busy there, and while I'm keeping busy in Bosnia. She and I have been to Bosnia about 9 or 10 years ago. Beautiful country, but I don't know much about it. I think the total population of the country is roughly about the population of here in Bucharest.
Yes.
So it's going to be, it will be interesting.
What is your opinion about the capital market in Romania? You fight.
I fought very hard.
Yes.
I fought for that very hard because my whole career really has been in the capital markets. And I always believe there's a chance, but I think Romania missed a real big opportunity probably about 5 or 6 years ago when they were well on the way to privatizing a lot of the state-owned enterprises through the capital markets and doing their IPOs and SPOs. There was one period during the subsequent government that really that whole process was taken off the table. And hopefully it'll come back on the table. But I think we missed a lot of momentum in the capital market development. And there are other countries in the region which have moved very fast ahead. And I think I'm still optimistic, but I think a lot has to be done. I think there's a lot of ground that has to be caught up with.
How is the future of the capital market compared with other countries in the region?
I mean, Romania is the second largest country in Central and Eastern Europe behind Poland. Poland has a very vibrant stock exchange. Romania should have one also. I mean, does it make sense that Bosnia has one, that Kosovo has one, that Albania has one, that Serbia, Croatia? It's like having a stock exchange in every 50 of the United States. 100 years ago, that was true.
Yes.
But now it isn't so. You have a lot more because of the changes in the SEC regulations in the States. You have a lot more exchanges, but they're all digitalized. And I think what will happen is all the flotations in the business is going to flow to the arena that normally has the best liquidity. And right now that seems to be Warsaw. Even Vienna used to be a premier stock exchange, and I think they've lost a little bit of their luster as a stock exchange. So right now it looks like Warsaw is going to probably be the main stock exchange east of Frankfurt.
What do you think is the future of the global financial system?
Tough to say.
After coronavirus,
I'm not looking at so much the coronavirus, I'm looking at more what's happening from a fiscal and monetary standpoint. Basically, if you look at the ECB is the market now. I mean, in some cases they bought some companies' bonds. They're the owner of 75% of some of the bonds listed by certain big companies in Germany, for example. They've taken the place of traditional investors. Negative interest rates are, I look at it as a confiscation of people's hard-earned money. Why should I pay the bank to take money from me? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I want a return. I don't want to give up something by giving money. The whole system, from what I learned back starting in 1977, seems to have turned 180 degrees. And I'm still glad to see the United States doesn't have the negative rates that we have here in Europe, and the United States is still the most vibrant capital markets in the world, and will continue to be that for the long run. And whereas in Europe, you really have the banking system generating 75% of the loans or the funding for companies in Europe, versus 25% of the capital markets in the United States. If I remember correctly, my statistics, it's the exact opposite. 25% comes from the banks and 75% comes from the capital markets. And it's just a different philosophy, I think, or culture.
Where is it worth investing your savings from your point of view? Because banking, like you said, it's not worth shares in each companies.
I can tell you where I would not put my money, and that is in, probably going to get punished for this one, but I wouldn't put it in bonds. I think the entrepreneurs, both here in Romania and in other countries, especially in the U.S., I mean, you look at some of the brilliant ideas that are coming out both in digital, in the healthcare industry, in telecommunications, and probably other ideas that I haven't even thought of yet. And the United States right now is really the #1 country in terms of private equity for these startups. And they float on the exchange, and if you're lucky enough to really do your homework and you find out and you understand the dynamics of some of these companies, and you can invest. I mean, I wish I invested in Microsoft, I wish I invested in Apple, which I did, but I sold it. I sold way too early. I mean, I could have probably bought an island in the Caribbean by now. So I think the stock market is the way to go in the future. Also, with all this monetary easing in the central banks, the quantitative easing, and also the fiscal easing in response to COVID, you've got a double whammy in the sense that you have liquidity coming into the system from the National Bank, is what I said, the fiscal stimulus. Inflation at some point is going to go up, and it's going to go up a lot. And therefore, I remember there used to be a U.S. comedian that said, "Buy land because they're not buying it. They're not making any more of it." And I think hard assets are also going to be the place to invest. I mean, you look at what some of the paintings are going for these days. Art.
Even here in Romania, I saw this.
Classic cars.
Yes. Yes.
All I have to do is keep my car long enough, and maybe it'll be a classic. Maybe it'll support me in my old age. So I think clearly bonds is not the place to be because you're not getting anything for
Yes.
investing in them. Zero interest rate, negative even.
But cryptocurrencies. What
Good,
about
that's good. That's something that I probably should know more about. I still don't. I understand blockchain, but I don't understand the whole idea about cryptocurrencies. I think the concept is interesting, and it will probably be around and stay around. Whether we will have cryptocurrencies in the future as we know them now, I don't think so. I think it will evolve somehow, and how, I don't know. But talking with people, there are, like I said, there are things that I just can't fathom, and I still have a hard time understanding how the whole process works.
How do you see the resolution of the global debt crisis?
Ending very badly. But, I mean, it's going to end very badly. Every civilization has been brought to its knees virtually by just a debt overhang, and then the repudiation of the debt, and then the civilization starting over. This is not going to be any different.
The capitalism will be transformed. We will have another system.
Everything evolves, and capitalism will evolve. Banking will evolve. Everything evolves. So. All I know is that it's not possible to live well beyond your means. I mean, you and I have a domestic budget. We make money, we earn money, we invest it, we have money for the mortgage, we have money for food, we have money for vacation, and we live within a budget. The countries around the world today, the budget's gone out this window, and you know, you can't live that way. It's like me just going to the store and just buying what I want every day. I mean, at some point, I have to pay for it.
Yes.
And the question is how our government's going to pay for it. And it's either they're going to raise your taxes, which most are doing right now, or they're going to repudiate the debt, which means just like when we had the RON, when I first got here, prices were in millions of RON, and then we just sort of took 4 zeros.
Yes.
So instead of what will happen probably by most of these countries is they'll say come in and turn in $1 million worth of or euro worth of government bonds, and we give you 1 new euro back of new government bonds. So it's going to end very badly.
Capital markets have risen in a time of crisis. How do you think this decoupling is possible? Because last year and this year the capital markets have grown a lot.
Well, like I say, coming back to the liquidity, both from the fiscal side and the monetary side, the first place excess liquidity goes is the capital markets because it can be put to work immediately. Whereas if you buy real estate or you build real estate, you have to find land, you build a building, you build a house, and you have to find a buyer, and so it's a lengthy process. Whereas in New York or in very developed capital markets, you can just pick up the phone and say, buy this, buy that. And if you have the money, it settles 1 or 2 days from now. So the first place excess liquidity goes is the capital markets, or liquid capital markets. Then it starts trickling down through the economy. Then it goes to the next layer of assets that are easier to invest, or a little bit harder to invest, and then a little bit harder. And then you get down to more illiquid investments, possibly land or other things.
So how you see the future in the next 10 years? How you see the future of the financial system in 10 years, in 2030?
Financial system, hard to say. Banking system, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we won't recognize what banks and financial institutions have become. They're going to change radically. And usually what forces that radical change is another crisis. And after the last financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, a lot of regulations were put in place, primarily to protect the banking system, protect the global financial system. I think we have too many regulations, and what's going to happen is in the next crisis, because it will come, I'm not sure that we'll probably get a lot more regulations that will shape the financial system and the banking system in a new way that we probably don't imagine right now. I mean, one of the things I think about is that banks will become almost like a utility, that you will be regulated in terms of how much you can charge a customer, how much you can earn on the loans, and how much you can pay on dividends. And so therefore it will be almost like a gas company or an electric company where the company gets a guaranteed rate of return and they pay that 80% out or 50% out or whatever to their shareholders, and it's a public utility. And that's what probably banks will become at some point.
You stayed 20 years in Romania.
Yep.
The family?
21.
21. Was your family's life influenced by the Romanian?
Sure. I mean, we had 3 young children when we came to Bulgaria. The oldest was going from 8th grade into high school, and we had one going into 3rd grade and another one going into 6th grade. And clearly they had a number of friends in Bulgaria. We were only there for 2 years, so they obviously had a lot more friends here in Romania. They went to the American International School. The friendship that they made, they still have today. Our oldest son actually met his wife at one of the other international schools. They met at a sports tournament in 2004, I think it was, in Prague. And she was going to the Budapest International School. James was going to the American International School in Bucharest. And they kept in touch. They wound up at the same university in Philadelphia, St. Joe's. And then they got married in 2014. So we have a daughter-in-law as a result of our international experience in Romania. It also, being overseas, really matured the children in a much faster way than they would have been if they were back home in the States. And they grew up a lot faster. They have a lot more maturity than I did at their age. And they have all very successful careers. My daughter is raising her 9 children.
Wow.
Our oldest son is responsible for North America and Canada for WeWork on the IT part. And Ian is a financial advisor with AXA. So they're all doing very well.